All right. Welcome, everybody. This is Chad from CoachCarson.com, and I'm so excited to have an interview today with Jillian Johnsrud, and she is coming to me from Montana. And we're going to be talking about mini retirements. We're going to get into rental properties, and mini retirements is a subject that Jillian knows very well, having experienced it herself and also helped coach other people and taught other people how to do it. I love mini retirements, but I can't wait to learn more. So, Jillian, welcome to the call.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. So a lot of people, I know you, I follow your blog. I love what you do over at Montana Money Adventures, but just for those who don't know you, could you give us a little bit of a background about you, about yourself, about your family, kind of what got you into this online world and mini retirements?
Yeah. So my husband and I have been married for over 15 years now. I got married at the ripe old age of 19, just jumped straight on in.
Nice.
And we'd always just kind of wanted to do, like, that very first year, we were in no position to make a mini retirement. Like, we were $50,000 in debt. And I think that first year we made like $12,000. So like, it wasn't an awesome start.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had this idea that I loved the idea of being able to take some time away to be able to focus on other things outside of our 9 to 5 that are really important to us. So yeah, we kind of just had that in our heart. So as we like started paying down debt and as we started saving, like that was always one of the goals. So this is actually our 5th mini retirement that we've taken. Yeah, and in the last 15 years, like it wasn't like overnight, but we paid off that $50,000 for the debt. We probably took the first one when I was maybe 24. I took a month off to travel. I negotiated it with my employer. Like, there's a lot of ways you can do it. I negotiated it off with my employer, and me and my best friend traveled from DC, road tripped all the way to Seattle and back in a month, like in like camping and tents and like sleeping in our car and eating instant oatmeal. And it was so awesome.
I think that's so cool. And you know what's so interesting to me is, so you've been married for 15 years. You've had 5 different mini retirements, and we'll dig into maybe some of the specifics of some of the ones you took. I mean, that was one specific example, but it's this idea that, hey, you're not waiting until, you're 50, 60, 70 years old to do some of these things that we all dream about doing. You're actually like finding a way to intersperse them throughout your life. I think that's such a neat idea. You said it's kind of what came to you. Was there anybody you knew that had done this, or was this just something you said, well, I think I'll just try this and take a month off and do it, even though I'm paying off debt, even though I'm, building a life for myself and with my family? I mean, what motivated you to do that?
Yeah, it was crazy. And my sweet husband, like I presented this idea and he's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. Honey, I don't think people actually do that though. And I was like, no, but it'll be awesome. Like we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it actually, we were in Bible college that first year. And it was this idea of like how you work 6 days and take the 7th day off. I was like, what if we worked 6 years and took every 7th year off? So that was kind of our initial plan. I was like, logistically, how would we have to do that? Like, how much would we have to save each of those 6 years to like take a year off on the 7th year? So that was kind of the initial inspiration that got us moving forward.
Yeah, sabbatical, take a rest. That's exactly right. So I'm thinking about the emotions of this, because sort of the response your husband had, I think, is probably pretty common, maybe in our own head, but also from other people around us who say, are you crazy? What are you thinking? And so I'm interested in both your own experience and maybe what you've seen from other people, sort of the emotional tackling of that emotional issue. So I can't do this. There's this fear on the one hand and there's this excitement on the other hand, and you want to do it, but usually that need for security and fear sort of wins out. So how did you both like kind of emotionally, but also practically deal with that fear issue?
I think it's good to start small, to be honest. Like I said, that first time I negotiated a month off. And it was a small calculated risk, and it had a huge reward. I mean, just right now we have 5 kids at home. So like life is crazy. And my best friend who I did that trip with, She lived in Ecuador for 6 months.
All right.
And she had just come back. And so before she took another job, she had like this little gap. But now she's the CEO of a very large nonprofit. She manages a huge team, like 100 volunteers. I have 5 little kids. There is no way her and I are going to do a road trip for a month. Like,
Right.
that's not happening. For
Right.
one, I don't sleep on the frozen ground anymore. I did in my 20s. I am almost 35, and that season has passed
Not happening.
in my life. So, start with like small calculated risks, or you can really experience the benefit and do something that like only fits in that season of life.
Right.
If that was something I could only do at 24, while we had the opportunity, and if I wouldn't have done it, not only could I not have pushed it off till I'm 65, I couldn't really do that at 35.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I mean, when you're in your 20s, sleeping on the ground, camping, hiking, I think of some of these epic road trips my wife and I took before kids, where you had the backpacks and we were going around South America and Spain. And I'm kind of exhausted thinking about the pace of the schedule now. I'm such a sit still and stay in one place. I mean, we're in Ecuador now in our mini retirement, but it's such a different experience. We're walking to school every morning. We're taking the kid. I mean, we're such homebodies, even wherever we are. So yeah, it's that phase of your life. And it seems like, so often we think about missing out on our job, or we're missing out on the opportunity to build wealth. But what you're saying, which makes so much sense, is that you might miss out on that once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. It might be a month, it might be 2 weeks, it might be a year, but where if you would have missed that, think about that regret later on and what that might mean to you. So that's been a big motivator for me as well, is that, hey, you got to take advantage of this while you can do it. What would you say though to the other side? I mean, that other objection of saying, well, I'm in this job, I'm in my 20s, I've got to pay my dues. Are you going to be missing out on some of the career opportunities and wealth building opportunities that other people are taking advantage of because you're doing these interval mini retirements or taking time away?
I think when you're first starting out, before you kind of grow into financial independence, you need to be really strategic about it. You need to put a little bit of thought into it. Because the reality is, this is our 5th one, but in 15 years, we went from $50,000 in debt. Combined, we've never earned more than $60,000 a year. Like, we're not like the dual engineer family. We've had 6 kids along the way, and we've taken 5 mini retirements. And we hit financial independence, in under 15 years. Like, now we're financially independent. So we have a lot more options, but we didn't sabotage ourselves with those mini retirements. Like, we took advantage of it, but we really leveraged those and got the most bang for our buck with the least amount of risk. So I think there is a way to just be like, forget my job, like forget savings. I'm just going to go like travel for 2 years and then that could set you back. But we actually used our mini retirements. We can get into this a little bit. But 2 of those were to buy and renovate houses.
No, let's dig into that. So, it sounds like earlier on, you took a month trip, you saved some money probably to do that. The main point is you're not being like a wild-eyed risk taker here. You're thinking, it sounds like you have kind of 2 parallel paths. You have, I need to do this in my life because this is important to my family, to me, to my soul. But then you have this practical side of yourself as well that says, you know what, I've got debt, I've got needs here, I have to support myself. And so you kind of grew into it. You took small steps, you moved, but then I want to hear about, let's talk about some of your specific times where you took it. So the first one you took off was a month where you went on a road trip. Tell me about kind of how your mini retirements evolved and what you did during those times, renovating properties, for example.
Yeah. So our second one was actually a period of time where I was between jobs, and that's another great opportunity to seize. If you have that natural gap, you can like sit home and be sad and just try to apply for jobs all day. Or if you've prepared, if you've like saved some money and you know what you want to do and you have this one big dream that could fit into a month, you can just like hurry up and go chase that down and get that under your belt while you're naturally in between jobs. Because like there will be internet you can respond to emails.
Yeah.
You can keep applying for jobs while you're going to do this cool thing. And that second one was actually, we were living in DC and we ended up coming back to Montana. And we had adopted our oldest son, and he was probably 12 at the time. And it was just one of the best trips. Like, we did all of my favorite Montana things. We went to hot springs, we hiked in Glacier, we did Avalanche Creek, like we kayaked on Lake McDonald, just all of these really, really wonderful memories. And it was, we took a lot of family vacations, and that one was the best one.
So neat. Yeah, that's really cool. And so I just kept thinking as you're talking about, you're turning lemons into lemonade, as this old saying goes, right? Yeah, you're taking, and I guess you have to think about that ahead of time though too, right? If you know that, hey, here's a list of things that I would like to do if I had the time, and then all of a sudden, oops, I'm out of a job here. You go back to your list of, hey, this is my next thing I want to do. And so for you, was that sort of how it worked for you? Did you already have that in mind, or was it just like, oh, I've got a month or two here, I'm just going to go do it?
That was something that I'd really wanted to do. And, I think there's those things that were like, oh, if we had a month, that would be great. And it's just so hard to get the time off, and it's hard to negotiate the time off, and you're not sure if it's the right time to really do that. So we had saved money for it. I actually have, in the free video training, I have like your mini retirement go bag. Like go bag, like if you like had to leave your house really quick and you have everything packed and prepared, and you need to have like what you're going to do, what the logistics are, the money on hand, in this case, probably in a checking account somewhere. So that, the day that you get let off, like you can go home and be sad for a day, but then the next day you pull out your go bag and you're like, and now we're really going to do this.
Right. Yeah.
Because there's that temptation to just like sit home and be sad.
Yeah, you don't waste time. You have it there. It's kind of like your emergency toolkit for when the power goes out. You've got the flashlight ready. You've got your emergency mini retirement go kit to be ready to go when the time strikes. And
that vacation, part of like what really kept inspiring me to just be intentional, and to, after we get through like knowing how to pay our bills, getting out of some debt, and like once we have some financial stability, then I think it's really time that we need to switch gears and start living the life that we're excited about. Like, our life is so short and each year is so precious. Like, I don't want to like just grind through, I'm going to suffer for 10 years so that maybe like the rest is better. Like I want to just kind of enjoy each of those moments. Because it was probably 8 years later, we finally moved back to Montana. And so it can be easy to say, well, that doesn't really matter because that trip shouldn't matter because then you moved here. And you could do that stuff anytime. But like a month after we moved here, our oldest son passed away. And that was our one chance. Like, that was my one chance to share all of my favorite Montana things with him and to have that great trip. Nothing's promised. And so in each season, think about like, it just takes a little bit of planning and a little bit of preparation, and you can really savor and enjoy all of those moments. Wow. It's just so impactful. And I think all of us have these moments where we realize that, it's usually after the fact, I guess, in my own case too. You're like, all right, I should have done that, or I could have done that. But hey, I mean, this is it. We're not promised anything, and we're not promised moments. And so it's just such a powerful reason why doing this is beyond, I think especially people who are ambitious and who are kind of go-getters. And I think we fall even more succumb to the kind of the illusion that these things and this 20 years from now, I mean, that's important to plan for that, but man, the epitome of what you're talking about here is so strong to me, because it's finding a way to balance being practical with living your life and doing what matters and building relationships with people. I think that's so awesome. Kind of transitioning a little bit to maybe some of the practical side of how you did this.
and how, so, early on, it sounds like you saved some cash. Maybe, maybe you had your kind of go kit ready. That was a practical part of it. What were some, as you evolved and some of your mini retirements evolved, what were some of the different ways you just paid for them? So just the money side of things. I think people would be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, I think it's actually a lot more affordable than a lot of people initially think. Until you price something out, it can just feel like, well, that's an impossible number. How much does it cost to like travel around the world for a year? Well, it must just be a mind-boggling, impossible number.
Right.
But once you actually kind of put that in on a spreadsheet or a Google Doc and say, well, how much would the flights cost, and how much would our hotels cost, or how much would this experience cost? And you get your dream budget number. Say, actually, okay, this is the net that we need to cover. For most people, they go, oh, well, if I want to do that in 3 years, like that's only going to cost $30,000 or $40,000. That means I need to save like an extra $10,000 a year. Like there's so many ways I could hustle to make an extra $10,000 a year over the next 4 years to cover that. So knowing your budget is a huge first step, because it also, once you have, what you want to do and how much it's going to cost. In my full mini retirement course, the first module, the first week, is just kind of life planning questions. It's just these mentoring questions that I use with people, because once we kind of dig out what people want their life to look like, what's important to them, what are they passionate about, what in the very limited time we have on this earth, what kind of impact do they want to have, and what do they want to do with this? And once people get really clear on that, all of the other choices start to make more sense. All of the logistics, it's kind of like a filter or a lens that we can like filter different opportunities through and different ways of approaching things. Two of the people who actually went through the Mini Retirement's Mastered course, within 2 months of finishing, both got the largest raises of their lives.
How about that?
Because they were like, oh, actually, I'm in a good spot. Like, they ran all of their numbers again, and they're like, I'm in a good position, and I know what I want from my life. And their bosses were like, please don't leave. Please don't leave. And they gave them ridiculous amounts of money to be like, just stay. Please just stay a little bit longer.
Very cool.
So good and bad, I guess. One was able to negotiate time off for his master's degree. Initially, he had took the course because he was like, I want to go get my master's degree. He's in his 20s. But after he starts through the life plan, he's like, well, I guess I don't really need to quit to do that. And he talked to his boss and said, hey, I'm in a good spot financially. I want to get my master's degree. And she's like, we will make it work. I will give you 3 months off a year. Like, you can do that. You got a huge raise out of it too. I'm like, how? But once he was able to negotiate time off for his master's, and I would say about a 30% raise.
Interesting. Like, amazing. Crazy. And I found, you probably have so many stories because you work with people in the class and you work with people in the, one-on-one coaching as well sometimes. But I have a similar story. When we took a trip, my wife and I did for 4.5 months before we had kids. My wife had a job teaching at a local technical college. And so she had to go negotiate with them to say, we were just kind of counting on, she's just going to say, bye, I'm going to quit. Yep. And, we'll figure it out once we get back. And we had prepared for that financially, but she was so amazed, and I was too. It was such a kind of one of those sweaty palm conversations to go into a supervisor and say, we're going to be taking a trip. We're taking off. I don't expect to make any money when I'm gone, but I'm not going to be here to teach. And the initial response from what I remember of it was, well, what you're going to be teach when you get back, right? And it was not like, you're gone, or how could you do this to us? It was, well, we want you, and of course you're going to come back. And so it was like, as soon as she got back, she had her full-time job, and it was on her terms and her negotiation. And it was such an eye-opening experience to see, one, how much is negotiable when you have the leverage of having done what you're talking about, done your homework, prepared, thought about the big picture. that when you go ask for things, we're just not used to asking for them. And very often, the worst thing, you prepare for the no, but very often you're going to get it. You're going to get the raise, you're going to get the time off, you're going to get the job when you come back. And so I found that so amazing. I think a lot of people are probably afraid to ask that question as well.
It doesn't happen 100% of the time, but like in the full course, I have a whole module on employment, like how to negotiate time off, how to set yourself up to come back to the same career field, how to get better job offers. Like this is after you've kind of been in the thick of it for a while, you're like, oh, this is how it works. And how it actually works is employees have way more power and leverage than they think they have. Like sometimes we fall under this mindset of like our boss is doing us a favor by giving us a job without realizing that we're employed there because we add far more value than they're paying us. That's why they keep us there, because we add so much value and our pay is lower than our value that we give to the company. So there is a lot of room for negotiation in that. And even just like one quick tip, and this it shocks everybody at first how well this works. But when you go, let's say you have that conversation and they're like, and you want to be on for like a year, so they can't necessarily hold your job, but they're always kind of like, well, when you come back, please see if we have a spot open. You send an email to your whole professional network. And a very short professional email that says, I've enjoyed working with you all. Like, this has been a great experience. I will be leaving to do, and very brief, this awesome adventure. If you have any follow-up questions, please, about, related to my job, here is my replacement and their contact information. And if you need to contact me personally, here is my personal contact information. I still look forward to working with you all in the future. You send that first email, and then you send a second email to the group that is a little bit closer, like not just your casual acquaintances, but your closer circle professionally. And you say, this has been such a great experience and I love this field. I am so excited to go off and to do this amazing one-time specific thing that I'm doing. But I'm really excited to come back afterwards. If you happen to think of anything, if something comes up while I'm gone, please let me know. If you would forward that along, I would appreciate it. Thank you all so much. Here's my contact information.
Wow.
Because what happens is people are sitting around in boardrooms, in meetings, all of the time going, who could we get for that spot? Who's available? And by just putting that out there, that you are available. You're doing something cool, but you're kind of available. And they probably think that you're more available than you actually are, because other people don't take our dreams as seriously as we do. We got so many job offers when we left. Better job offers than we ever got while we were working, because you're top of mind and people are thinking of you and they know you're available, and they kind of have this positive association because you are doing this really cool, amazing adventure.
Yes.
Yeah.
It also seems to me it's the principle of kind of like when somebody wants something too much, then you kind of back off, right? Whereas if you don't want it that much, like this person, she's taking a trip off, she has her stuff together, she obviously is not needy or desperate, she's proactive. I mean, so like all those things are going to be going through their head, even if they're not conscious of them, thinking this person is good and they're qualified and they're on the tip of my tongue. I can completely see how that would work really well. So I love that. I love the tips that you have to help people alleviate some of these fears. And at the close of the call, I want to go into some of the kind of like the connecting the gap between people thinking they have the idea of doing a mini retirement and maybe what you show in the course to actually get them kind of specifically to those steps. I want to go through some of those steps before we close, but I have to get to some more of the details of your story before we do that, in terms of some of your rental property stuff, because I know a lot of people who are listening to this are landlords or buying and flipping houses. And so they're going to be interested in kind of what you and your husband's story is around real estate and how that's benefited you with your mini retirements.
Oh man, I love our rentals. So it's funny in that we rented for 10 years before we bought our first property. And part of that was just circumstance. Like we lived in the DC area. We lived overseas for 4 years. I wasn't going to buy a house overseas. And so we moved back, but we had planned the whole time, like, I want to buy a house. Like I love houses. So we came back. It probably the best time. And I say that because when you're prepared for things, and when you're kind of ready and intentional, good times are good and bad times are good. Every time is good. Like stock market going up is good. Stock market going down is good. Housing market going up is good. Housing market going down is good. Like when you're ready, you can take advantage of whatever situation you're in. And we were ready. And so it was good in that the stock or the house market was bad when we came home. But we had lots of cash. So we bought our first house. And here's another gap. My husband took not like 9 months off. And I took a whole bunch of months off too. And we bought our first house with cash. And we gutted the whole thing because we never owned a house. We had no skills, none. Like we owned no tools. We knew nothing. So we just got on YouTube and YouTubed everything and said, we're going to figure this out. And it was terrifying. I mean, that's terrifying. It was not like Chip and Joanna Gaines were standing there saying, we will make this look beautiful. No, it was just me and him, and we had no idea if it would work. But we bought our first house and we only finished the top half. It's like 1,600 square feet, so it's like 8 and then 8 in the basement. We only finished the top half, and we lived just in the top half. And we used the rest of the money that we were going to finish renovating this very ugly house. Oh, I bought the ugliest house. My whole family was like, Jillian, sweetie, why would you do that? But there again, like I was so set on like, we wanted more financial freedom. And if it took an ugly house, so we had like $200,000 saved up. $200,000 at that time in this market would have bought us a very nice house. Or we could have bought a $100,000 house, which would have been a pretty decent house and still had $100,000. Like that's a good choice. What choice did we make? We bought a $50,000 house. And then we took the other 150 and bought 2 more houses, all of which completely ugly, all of which needed so much work, so outside of our skill set, so outside of our capabilities. They still need a lot of work. I mean, it's kind of an ongoing process.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now we own the house we live in and it's paid for. It gives us tons of financial freedom. Our family of 7 can live really comfortably on under $30,000 a year. No problem. Part of that's not having a mortgage. But we have 2 rentals now. And because we had quite a bit of cash, and we did a lot of work. I mean, we bought the ugliest, scariest houses. One of our house, we call it the yellow house, was on the market for so long. And I have probably met literally 100 people who said, oh, I looked at that house, and passed it by. Because there was so much wrong with it. And it was one of those overwhelming, scary projects.
So the fact that obviously you learned a lot on your first residence, but it sounds like you bought those rental properties pretty soon after that. Was it did you read about real estate investing? Did you say, I think we can rent properties? Did you have a friend who did it? Or did you just kind of like your mini retirement thing to say, I think that's a good idea. Let's just jump into it.
We kind of just jumped into it. I had read while we were renting for 10 years, like I had read about properties and I'd always thought that was going to be part of our plan. But sometimes it can be easy to look back and say, well, that was the perfect time to buy a house. Nobody in real life thought that was the perfect time to buy a house. And I remember, so I ended up getting a job halfway through and I left my poor husband alone to finish. We bought 2 houses initially, and then we ended up we negotiated another month off, like a year and a half later, to buy that 3rd property. and renovate it and get it ready, and combined it with the trip. So you don't just have to do like hard stuff. You can be like, this will be a dual purpose 3 months off. We'll buy and renovate a house and we'll do an awesome trip that time to see friends. But yeah, I remember I had a boss who was like, why are you doing this? Like, why would you? He's like, it just seems so risky. It seems so risky. And I was like, Larry, if I had the money, I would buy 10 of these houses. I would buy 10 of them. And honestly, that house, between the work we've done and its natural appreciation, has grown over $100,000. I wish I could have bought 10 of those houses. I mean, extra $1 million.
Isn't that amazing? And I think a theme we're seeing throughout this, whether you're investing in real estate, whether you're taking mini retirements, that the voices both in your head and from well-meaning people are not always going to be supportive of what you're doing. And so surrounding yourself with people who have real knowledge and are practical, but also support what you're doing, I think is super important, which brings me back to your course, because, you know, I think if I had a course, I love taking courses. I've educated myself from the very beginning in real estate investing and other blogging, different things. And so I really believe that if you have something you want to do, getting help from somebody else, you know, I played sports my whole life. And so I always had coaches, always had people, you know, making me kind of take my game to another level. And so I think this is a perfect example. You know, I'm sure people having listened to this point have either said, I'm in or I'm not. You know, this is a great idea. I have a list of mini retirement things I want to do, or they're not. And so let's just talk to the people who do have a list. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of doubts. And so I guess just kind of briefly take me through what a person who takes your course, like where they typically start, what kind of things you help them with, and what your goal for them is at the end, and just as they close the course and they move on with the next steps.
Yeah. So my hopeful outcome for people, the worst case situation, like the lowest effective dose, is I want them to be able to negotiate a month off. And I feel like for most people, if they're like, if I can make sure that happens, it's worth the price of admission.
Right.
The best case scenario for me, for people's outcome, is that it radically shifts the trajectory of their life to where their day-to-day lines up more with things that are important to them, but they're able to start building in mini retirements. They're able to start doing these really cool, important things like, I was made to do this kind of stuff. Stuff that in 20 years, they wouldn't trade that experience for anything.
Yep.
Like if you ask me like, hey, Jillian, if we could somehow ransom away that experience that you had with your son in Glacier, like I can't put a price on that.
No.
And that was just 1 month. I mean, that's my lowest outcome there. But take mini retirements on the path to financial freedom. As you build financial freedom, like do both hand in hand. Because that's a concern that people have. Like, if I do this, won't it derail that? And it doesn't have to. Like sometimes it'll be a blip. The amount that it'll cost you, the amount of time, like you took a month off or 3 months off, and maybe it'll cost you 3 months at the end or 6 months. Like but it's stuff that you couldn't do 10 years later, you know, especially when people have kids. They're like, well, they calculate that FI number and they're like, wait a minute, shoot, my kids will be in college when that happens. Like, and it's great to travel when your kids are in college. Like, that's awesome. But it's not like when they're 4. It's not like when they're 6. I mean, when they're 6, everything's awesome. Like, we took our kids to Wall Drug, and that is like their favorite experience. Yeah. It will not be once they're teenagers.
No.
It will be lame.
Yeah, I used to take. It's the joke around my wife's family that my kids, and when we were back in Clemson in South Carolina where we lived, I would take them to the Western Sizzler, which I don't know if you have Western Sizzlers in Montana, but it's like the low budget kind of like steakhouse, and you know, but they'd have a buffet and like they like, yes, we're going to Western Sizzler, you know. It's like the 3 or 4 year olds, like my wife or my in-laws, like, what have you brainwashed our granddaughter into? I'm like, hey, kids are happy. They're with me. They're dada's excited. So that's to your point, you know, you go on, you've got to find the time. And I loved your advice earlier is that, you know, all of us sort of know what those things in our life are that we don't want to put off. And I think many times we're not giving ourselves permission to sort of dream about it. I think we've got, you know, when we were 15 or 10 or 12, it was okay, or 8 years old, it's okay to say, I want to do that when I grow up. But you become an adult, you go through this, you know, ladder of going to high school and to college maybe, and then getting into the real world. But I think it sort of beats that imagination out of you. And so this is what I love so much about what you're doing, Jillian, is that you're giving people like a permission to go do these things that they know they want to do. But then you're not only giving permission, which I love about, I've seen the inside of the course, by the way, is that you're showing them the practical steps. You're not like just saying, here's your dream, go do it, you know, and motivate people. You're actually going through the steps, you're journaling with them, you're there with them. And then you also have a community behind it of people who are doing the same thing. And that's something I think that's irreplaceable as well, is that you have, you know, information is great and you need to find the specific information, but having a community of people, having supportive people who can say, yes, you can do this. Here's how you can do it. Here's how I'm doing mine, hearing stories from other people. And so I guess maybe tell us a little bit about that aspect of your course, like what the other people, how interaction with you, interaction with other people on the course. So I think that'll be something that'll maybe help people kind of who are on the edge of doing it.
Well, I'll kind of walk you through, because I didn't quite get to that, what the course looks like. So it's 3 modules, and we actually do the whole thing as a group, because I really believe in kind of that group dynamic. And so after people buy a course, like the next challenge is finishing a course. And I really want everyone to finish. And then the next challenge after that is implementing that into their life. And I really want that to happen too. So the course is kind of broken into 3 modules. In the first one, we do all this life planning stuff. And this is something that even if you're like, yeah, I want to take a mini retirement in like 3 or 4 years. This is stuff that starts to become effective and powerful, like right out of the gate. Right out of the gate, like within a month after people go into the course, like they're applying for new jobs because they figure out, oh, this is my ideal day. And my job doesn't fit that at all. And they find jobs that are a better fit, like good stuff happens right away. And then module 2, once that is really clear, module 2 is all the logistics. It's all the stuff that scares the crap out of us. So we look at like all of the healthcare options, because we're like, what am I going to do for healthcare options? And we look at 6 different healthcare options. We look at employment, because people, they're scared. Like, how am I going to get this time off? How am I going to find a new job? Like, am I too young to find a new job? Am I too old to find a new job? Like, or sometimes people use this time not as just a break to go back to their normal job, but they want to, after this, transition into something else. They want to try to build a business. Maybe they want to scale their rentals. Like, they want life to look significantly different after their mini retirement. And the mini retirement's just the fuel. Like, it gives them the space to grow that dream. So we look at all the employment stuff. We look at the budget. Like, we figure out how much is this dream going to cost, and kind of complicated stuff too. Like, sometimes people have 3 different things, 3 separate kinds of dreams they want to pack into this one mini retirement. So we look at their base costs and the cost of each dream, and we figure out where, I use a kind of a 5 bucket method, like where are your assets right now? How do we need to shift those assets? What bucket do you need to put your savings in between now and then? Because which of those 5 buckets need to look like at the end? So where they are now, where do they need to look like? How do we bridge that gap? Like, super practical stuff. So those are all the logistics stuff. And then the last week is last module. It takes about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. The last module, we put all of those pieces together. So throughout the whole thing, you're writing down different action steps, like to-do list items, writing down different habits, different mile markers you need to hit. And you kind of keep a tally. And then we like legit just plan out like the next 5 years. Okay, what needs to happen in the next 5 years to move us closer to that, all the way down to like, here's what we're going to tackle this year. Here's what I'm going to be looking at this first quarter. So people have a workable plan that they know, like, it's not just an idea. Here are the next steps I need to take. and they can start knocking that off and making progress. And I only open this up, I'm probably only going to open it up once a year. This is not like a come and go, float in and out kind of thing, because we're going to do the whole thing as a group. We're going to start like middle of January. And so in this private Facebook community, we're going to be doing all of the mentoring questions together that first week. And we're going to be talking about it. I do live Q&As every week because I want people, like, every single question they have will be answered. I think that's another concern. Like, will I really figure out what I need to figure out? So if there's a question, like there's a thread, and I just go through on Facebook Live, like I don't care how long this takes. I'll sit on Facebook Live for 4 hours and answer questions if there's questions that people have. And we kind of just interact and we talk about the different things we're learning and we share ideas, and there's such a great collaboration. Like the first time we went through it, someone was like, I'm really interested in AmeriCorps. Like, I think that's what I would like to do during my year off. And another member was like, I work for them, so we should talk. Like, I can hook you up with that information.
So cool. Yeah, that's awesome. So it's such a good experience, and I would encourage people. And the reason I wanted to have this interview is because there's lots of information out there, and I so see the value in what you're doing for people, and I hope they get in touch. And this video is going to be out there for a long time. It might be 2017 or 18 when we recorded. It might be later on, but I encourage people to get in touch with you. Go to your website and just, whether it's on the blog, if the course isn't open, or if the course is available, you need to, if this is an idea for you, if mini retirement is an idea, you will not regret getting involved and getting help doing that. So, Jillian, I really appreciate your time. And can you tell people how, if they want to follow up with you and find out where you are, find out where the course is, where should they go to find all this?
Well, probably in your email, you'll have, if they watch this right after it's recorded, like a link. I'm going to do a free, like 3-part training. So if you're still like, I'm kind of on the fence, and it'll be just focused on the idea of taking a month off, because I think that that's a quick win for people like that. Even if you have student loan debt, even if your mortgage isn't paid off, like that is still a possibility. Right. You don't have to push everything to like 2 decades down the road. But then the main course will be open, I believe, January 5th through the 10th, because we're going to start it as a group. So if you watch this in that time frame, Chad should have a link for you to get over there. And if
thank you for the reminder. That'll be in the notes below there. So whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, it'll be in the comments in the section below. So yes, we'll have a link for you.
But if it's like May, if you go to my site, like subscribe to my newsletter. That is like the best stuff I write every week. That is the inside scoop. It's stuff I don't put anywhere else online. But every time that I release something or open something, I always let people on my subscriber list know. So if you want the inside scoop of whatever I'm building or creating, that is the place to get it.
It's a lot of fun to follow along. You whatever's on your mind, you get. The newsletter subscribers get it. So I love that.
Yeah. People ask me all the time. They're like, "Do you plan out what you're gonna write in your newsletter?" And I'm like, "No." Well, like my blog content is like calendared out months, but I sit down and I write that in real time, and I don't even know it's gonna be in there, but. I feel safer with my subscribers. Like, I feel like they're like my crew. The stuff that it would be scary to put on the worldwide internet, I let my peeps know. Yeah,
I'm with it. Yeah, the newsletter, that is a special list. My newsletter list, I feel the same way. Those are my insiders, the people I like to talk to and get good responses from. So, so awesome. This has been an awesome conversation, Jillian. I really appreciate your time and look forward to people hearing about what you're doing and taking their own mini retirements. We both want to hear the stories of how, whether it's a month or whether it's a year, what this does for your life, because we're both kind of, I think we like to go out and evangelize this. This is one that's been it's been such a big part of my experience, and it's been such an awesome, like you said earlier, if there were one thing nobody could pay me enough money. I could lose every bit of my money, but if I had those experiences I've had in the middle of my growth periods with my pre-kids, during kids, I mean, it's an irreplaceable thing. And so doing this is something we both obviously highly encourage and get behind. So I
tried to price the course to be like a no-brainer. Like if you're even tempted by this idea, like the price is so low that like, even if it helps get you an extra month off, like even if it's the tipping point between taking a year and not taking a year, like, I don't know, I think it's just a no-brainer. And that's my crazy dog.
That's your cue. That's your cue.
Crazy dog. Cheesy dog. Cheesy dog right there. I'm gonna get off the phone.
We got to get off of it. All right. Well, have a great day. Great talking to you, Jillian. Talk to you next time.
Thanks,
All right. Bye-bye.